Okay, so I want to tell a story today, and that story is about how one of my aunts in my family do not talk to me because they think that I, at the age of 16, did something with her partner at the time. And I have been a nervous wreck to talk about something like this and to tell this story. A, because of my family. B, because I don't want people, it's not to hurt people to tell my story. But at the same time, I've been working through this so much in therapy, and this is something that goes way deep to my core in terms of worthiness and how I feel about myself. And it's been such a journey.
The internet froze the moment Tamar Braxton finally broke her silence. Not whispered, not hinted, exposed. One leaked audio clip, barely 30 seconds long, detonated across social media and shattered everything fans thought they knew about the Braxton family. Tamar's voice, shaking but furious, cut through the noise with a sentence that felt illegal to hear out loud. "I wasn't written off. I was pushed out. And my sister made the call. That was all it took." Timelines exploded. Group chats went feral. Fans felt that sick drop in their stomach when a family's secret slips out before it's supposed to. For years, the story was simple. Tamar was too emotional, too unpredictable, too much. But now, Tamar is saying that story was a lie carefully constructed to protect one person and destroy another. Toni Braxton, the golden sister, the untouchable icon. According to Tamar, this wasn't about ratings or behavior. This was about fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of secrets slipping out on camera. Feared that Tamar knew something she was never supposed to say out loud. And when Tamar got too close to telling the truth, the knives came out quietly, professionally, and permanently. Contracts vanished. Calls stopped coming. Family went silent. And the show moved on as if Tamar never existed. But now she's back, and she's not begging anymore. She's naming names. Playing audio? Hinting at betrayals so deep they could collapse the entire Braxton brand. This isn't reality TV drama. This is a family war. And once you hear what Tamar claims really happened behind closed doors, you'll never watch the Braxtons the same way again by the time Tamar Braxton finally decided to speak. The damage had already been done. Years of silence, breakdowns, and carefully edited episodes had trained the public to see her one way: unstable, explosive, the problem child of the Braxton family. And that was exactly how they wanted it. Tamar says the moment she became dangerous wasn't when she yelled, cried, or stormed off set. It was when she stopped playing along. She claims there was a shift during filming that most viewers never noticed, a subtle tightening of the room whenever she spoke too freely. Whenever her emotions drifted off script, Tamar says producers started pulling her aside, asking leading questions, pushing her toward vulnerability they could package. She agreed, believing honesty was finally being rewarded. What she didn't know was that someone else was listening very closely and panicking, according to Tamar. Toni Braxton had already been quietly meeting with producers behind the scenes, framing Tamar as a liability before Tamar ever opened her mouth on camera. Emails allegedly circulated describing Tamar as emotionally unpredictable and brand risk adjacent. Tamar says she didn't see those messages until much later, but she felt the shift immediately. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Crew members avoided eye contact. Scenes she filmed suddenly disappeared from episode cuts. And then there was the meeting. A family sit-down that never made it to air. Tamar says it was tense, quiet, and carefully controlled. She tried to speak, but Toni allegedly cut her off with a look so cold it stunned her into silence. "This isn't the time," Toni reportedly said. Tamar claims that was the first moment she realized something bigger was happening. The official story that would later be leaked to the press was simple: creative differences, emotional exhaustion, mutual agreement. Tamar says that narrative was crafted before she even knew she was out. She insists she never quit, never agreed, never signed off. One day she was filming. The next, her access badge didn't work. Calls went unanswered. And when the paperwork arrived, it wasn't from a producer, it was from a lawyer. Legal language replacing family conversation. That's when Tamar says she broke. Not on camera. Not publicly. But alone, in her house, staring at a document that erased her. From the show that had consumed her life, what hurt more than the firing was the silence that followed. Tamar claims Toni never called. Not once. No explanation. No goodbye. No apology. Days turned into weeks, and the absence became louder than any argument they'd ever had. Tamar says she reached out anyway, desperate for clarity, only to receive a message that still haunts her. This is bigger than us. It's bigger than sisters. Bigger than blood. Bigger than truth. That was the moment Tamar says she understood she hadn't been removed because she was difficult. She'd been removed because she knew too much. Tamar claims there were secrets. Toni had spent years protecting. Moments that never made headlines, relationships that were quietly buried, decisions that could collapse the carefully polished image if exposed. Tamar insists she never planned to reveal anything publicly, but her very presence on the show was a threat. One emotional slip. One unfiltered moment. One truth spoken too loudly. That risk, she says, was unacceptable. So the narrative had to change. Suddenly, Tamar was the unstable one. The family problem. The distraction. Producers allegedly began coaching other sisters on how to respond to Tamar on camera, calmly, distantly, sympathetically, creating a contrast that made Tamar look unhinged by comparison. Tamar says she felt herself being cornered, edited into a caricature of her worst moments. Social media ate it up. Viewers criticized her behavior without ever seeing what led up to it. Scenes were shortened. Context was removed. Tamar says there were moments where she was provoked for hours, only for the episode to show 30 seconds of her reaction. Meanwhile, Toni's image remained pristine, quiet, composed, above the chaos. Tamar says that wasn't accidental, it was strategy. The more Tamar unraveled on screen, the more Toni looked like the stable anchor holding the family together. And when the time came to make a decision, the choice was already made. Behind the scenes, Tamar claims an ultimatum was issued. If Tamar stayed, Toni would walk. With Toni positioned as the face of the show, the decision took minutes, not days. Tamar's storyline was cut mid-season. Promotional materials were updated. Her name quietly removed. And the family moved forward without her, as if it were always meant to be that way. Tamar says watching the show air without her felt like watching her own funeral. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending nothing had happened. And her mother's reaction cut deeper than any producer's decision. Tamar claims Evelyn didn't fight it, didn't question it, didn't defend her. She simply told Tamar that sometimes sacrifices have to be made to protect the family. That sentence, Tamar says, changed how she saw everything. Because it confirmed a pattern she had felt her entire life but never wanted to believe that Toni was the priority. Then Tamar was the risk. The expendable one. The one you remove when things get messy. Tamar says her mental health spiraled after that realization. Panic attacks, isolation, feeling erased not just from television, but from her own family. And when she finally opened up about how dark things had gotten, she claimed she was dismissed once again as being dramatic. That word followed her everywhere. It justified the silence. It excused the betrayal. But not everyone turned their back. Tamar says Tracy showed up when no one else did. No cameras. No contracts. Just truth. Tracy allegedly admitted she had overheard conversations Tamar was never meant to hear. Calls where Toni expressed fear, frustration, and desperation to shut things down before they spiraled. Tracy warned Tamar to stay quiet, not because Tamar was wrong, but because the fallout would be nuclear. Tamar listened. For a while. She watched as the family continued without her, as her pain was minimized and her absence normalized. And she stayed silent because she still believed love would eventually bring honesty. That belief shattered. completely when Tamar realized how coordinated everything had been. The edits, the press leaks, the family's unified silence. It wasn't chaos. It was control. And Tamar wasn't removed to save the show. She was removed to save someone else. Someone who couldn't afford for the wrong truth to come out at the wrong time. Tamar says once she understood that, the anger finally overtook the fear. Because this wasn't about television anymore. It was about betrayal. Calculated, cold, permanent. And just when Tamar thought the worst thing they could do was erase her from the screen, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Proof that her removal wasn't just encouraged by the family, but demanded by forces far more powerful than the audience ever imagined. The truth Tamar uncovered after her firing didn't come all at once. It leaked into her life slowly, like poison seeping through cracks she didn't know existed. At first, it was whispers from former crew members who suddenly felt guilty. Then it was screenshots sent anonymously at 3 a.m. And finally, it was the call that confirmed everything she feared. Tamar says a former production assistant, voice shaking, told her there had been meetings she was never meant to know about. Closed-door meetings. No cameras. No minutes. Just executives, producers. And one sister whose voice carried more weight than anyone else's. Tamar wasn't discussed as a person. She was discussed as a problem that needed solving. She was discussed as a problem that needed solving. According to Tamar, those meetings didn't start with her behavior. They started with fear. Fear that something off camera was getting harder to control. She claims Toni had become increasingly paranoid during filming, constantly asking producers what footage they had, what conversations were being kept, and who had access to raw audio. Tamar says she brushed it off at the time, assuming it was stress. But now she believes Toni knew something was circling back. Something from her past that could destroy everything she'd built if the wrong person spoke at the wrong moment. And Tamar, emotional and unscripted, was the one variable that couldn't be managed. That's when the pressure allegedly began. Tamar says producers started pushing her harder, asking questions designed to provoke reactions. They wanted tears, explosions, breakdowns. And every time Tamar reacted, the camera lingered just a little longer. But what viewers never saw, Tamar claims, was what happened right before those moments. The comments whispered off mic. The dismissive looks. The subtle gaslighting. She says Toni rarely raised her voice. She didn't have to. A sigh. An eye roll. A single cutting sentence delivered calmly was enough to set Tamar off. And once Tamar reacted, the narrative wrote itself. Loud sister loses control. Calm sister stays composed. Repeat. Behind the scenes, Tamar claims the family dynamic shifted completely. Sisters who once defended her began distancing themselves. Conversations stopped feeling natural. Everything felt rehearsed. Tamar says she later learned that several family members had been warned not to engage with her on camera, not to escalate, not to validate her emotions. Let her burn out on her own. That way, when the moment came, her removal would look justified. And when Tamar confronted one of her sisters about the sudden coldness, the response chilled her. Just lay low, she was told. This will blow over. Tamar says that's when she realized this wasn't temporary. This wasn't about one season. This was about erasing her dot. Then came the revelation that reframed everything. Tamar claims she discovered Toni had been finalizing a high-level deal during that exact period, one that required image stability and minimal family controversy. Tamar says her name appeared in internal risk assessments as a potential obstacle, not because she was lying, but because she was unpredictable, real, unfiltered, and the people investing in Toni's brand couldn't afford real. They needed controlled. That's when Tamar believes the decision became irreversible. She wasn't a sister anymore. She was collateral. What broke Tamar wasn't just the betrayal, it was how cleanly it was executed. She says her removal was timed perfectly, right before press cycles, right before announcements. By the time fans noticed she was gone, the machine had already moved on. And when Tamar tried to speak privately to at least clear the air, she was shut down. One message from Toni, according to Tamar, still echoes in her head. You're going to ruin everything. Tamar says she stared at that text for hours. Everything. Not us. Not family, everything. The brand. The deals. The image. That's when the final illusion shattered. The things escalated after that. Tamar claims she began receiving strange messages from unknown numbers. At first, they sounded like advice. Move on. Focus on healing. Then they turned darker. Warnings about consequences. About how speaking out would hurt more than help. One message referenced a private conversation Tamar had never shared publicly. That's when fear set in. Because it meant someone was listening. Someone had access. Tamar says she reported it to her family, hoping for protection. She claims the response was dismissive. You're overthinking. Don't make this bigger than it is. But to Tamar, it already was big. It was terrifying. And then she learned the detail that made everything snap into focus. According to Tamar, the real reason she had to be removed wasn't something she did on camera. It was something she knew off camera. She claims Toni was being pressured by someone from her past, someone with receipts, powerful enough to destroy careers, audio, emails, financial trails. Tamar says she was present years earlier when certain conversations happened. When decisions were made that seemed harmless at the time but now looked dangerous. She insists she never planned to expose anything. But she didn't have to. Her proximity alone made her a threat. And when the pressure came down, the demand was simple. Silence Tamar. Remove her from the platform. Or everything comes out. Tamar says when she finally confronted her mother with this information, hoping it would change things, she was devastated by the response. She claims Evelyn told her this family can't survive another scandal. That sentence told Tamar everything. The choice had already been made. Truth was optional. Survival of the brand was not. From that moment on, Tamar says she stopped expecting fairness. She stopped expecting loyalty. She started documenting everything, screenshots, voice notes, 'cause she realized no one else was going to protect her story. Tracy, she says, was the only one who acknowledged how deep it went. Tracy allegedly warned her that powerful people were involved now, that this wasn't just family drama anymore. But Tracy also encouraged her not to lose herself in the silence. If you don't tell your story, Tracy reportedly said, they'll tell it for you. Tamar held on to that advice long after Tracy was gone, especially when she saw how quickly the family rewrote history, acting as if Tamar's absence was peaceful, mutual, necessary. By the time Tamar finally decided to speak publicly, she wasn't doing it for sympathy. She was doing it because she knew what was coming next. Because once secrets are protected at that level, someone always pays the price. And Tamar realized she had already paid with her reputation, her mental health, and her place in her own family. What she didn't know yet was that the moment she opened her mouth, the retaliation would begin. And it would be far more aggressive than anyone was prepared for. By the time Tamar finally went live, she already knew there was no turning back. She didn't ease into it. She didn't soften the edges. She looked straight into the camera with a calm that scared people more than tears ever could and said, I've been quiet long enough. Within minutes, the comments were flying faster than she could read. Fans sensed it instantly. This wasn't a meltdown. This was a reckoning. Tamar wasn't emotional. She was precise. She spoke like someone who had rehearsed the truth for years and finally decided to let it detonate. She confirmed what many suspected, but few dared to say out loud. Her firing wasn't just approved by the family. It was coordinated, protected, and enforced. Tamar claimed the retaliation started the moment she refused to stay silent. She said producers suddenly reached out, offering closure meetings that came with paperwork attached. Agreements that limited what she could say. When she declined, the tone changed. Friendly voices turned cold. Calls stopped being returned. Then came the leaks, anonymous tips to blogs painting Tamar as unstable again, quietly reminding the public why she was removed. Tamar said watching the same narrative get recycled felt like psychological warfare. because now she knew it wasn't accidental. It was intentional damage control. What pushed her over the edge was discovering that raw footage still existed, footage she had never seen and that it told a completely different story. A former editor allegedly contacted Tamar in tears, admitting scenes were deliberately altered to protect Toni. Moments where Tamar was provoked were removed. Confessions that softened Tamar's reactions were cut entirely. In one unedited clip Tamar claims to have heard, Toni allegedly admitted she was afraid Tamar would say the wrong thing on camera. That audio never aired. Instead, viewers saw Tamar storm out again, alone, angry, isolated. Tamar says that's when she realized the show didn't just fire her, it framed her. The backlash after her livestream was immediate and violent. Some fans rallied behind her. Others accused her of bitterness, of chasing attention, of disrespecting family. Tamar says the hate didn't surprise her. What did surprise her was how quickly legal pressure followed. She claims cease and desist letters were drafted within hours. Not just from the network, but from parties she had never publicly mentioned. That confirmed everything. Because innocent people don't panic like that. Innocent people speak. Silence, Tamar said, is the loudest confession of all. Silence, Tamar said, is the loudest confession of all. As the days passed, more cracks appeared. Anonymous insiders began leaking production memos. Emails referencing containment. Notes instructing staff to limit Tamar's airtime. Fans dissected old episodes frame by frame, noticing muted audio, awkward cuts, conversations that suddenly made sense. The internet did what it always does. It connected dots the machine never expected viewers to see. Hashtags trended. Clips resurfaced. Even people who once criticized Tamar began admitting something felt wrong. Too clean. Too controlled. Tamar revealed that the darkest moment came when she realized the threats weren't just professional. She claimed she received messages implying consequences beyond her career if she continued. Vague enough to deny. Clear enough to terrify. She said she slept with lights on for weeks. And when she told her family, she felt dismissed again. That dismissal hurt more than the threats. Because it meant protecting the truth was never the priority. Protecting the image was in her final stream. Tamar dropped the last bombshell. She said she wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. She was speaking for everyone who had been edited, silenced, reframed, and sacrificed to keep powerful people comfortable. She revealed she had backups of footage stored off-site. Multiple copies. She said former staff had signed sworn statements. She said the truth wasn't just emotional, it was documented. And she made it clear she didn't want revenge. She wanted acknowledgement. Say my name, she demanded. Say what you did. Say why? Because silence, she said, was the last weapon they had left. Still, there was no response from Toni. No denial. No clarification. Just perfectly curated photos, captions about peace, comments turned off. And to Tamar, that silence said everything. She reminded viewers that if she were lying, the truth would have already been posted. Instead, there was only avoidance, distance, control. Tamar said she spent years thinking she was too much, too loud, too emotional, too honest. But now she understood. She wasn't too much. She was too real for a system built on containment. She ended her story not with rage, but with resolve. She said she was done chasing acceptance from people who benefited from her silence. Done shrinking so others could stay comfortable. Done carrying the blame for decisions she never made. Tamar promised that no matter what happened next, the truth was already out. It couldn't be edited. It couldn't be muted. It couldn't be erased. And with one final sentence, she made it clear this wasn't the end. You took my platform, she said, but you gave me my voice. The screen went dark. The comments kept rolling. And the Braxton legacy, once polished, protected, untouchable, had never felt more exposed. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just another celebrity story. This is a moment. This is one of those times where silence equals consent, and looking away means letting the truth get buried all over again. Tamar didn't just speak for herself. She cracked open a system that thrives on erasing the loud, the emotional, and the inconvenient. And now the question is simple. Are you going to let it fade? Or are you going to be part of what happens next? Because here's the reality. Stories like this don't survive unless people keep talking. Algorithms move on. Headlines change. But pressure only works when voices stay loud. If you believe Tamar deserves accountability, if you believe family doesn't mean sacrifice, if you believe truth shouldn't be edited out for comfort, then this is where you step in. Hit that like button so this story doesn't disappear. Subscribe right now because what comes next will not be covered everywhere. And missing it means missing the receipts when they drop. And they will drop. Most importantly, go to the comments. Say what you really think. Was Tamar silenced or self-destructive? Was Toni protecting her family or protecting herself? Does the network owe Tamar an apology or an unedited release of everything they cut? Your comments matter more than you think. They shape what gets pushed, what gets questioned, and what can no longer be ignored. This isn't gossip anymore. This is accountability. Stay here, stay watching, stay loud, because once the truth is out, the only thing more dangerous than speaking it is pretending you never heard it. Pretending you never heard it.